Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for being on the Emotional Leads podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm going to call you also Dr. Katie because you are a functional medicine doctor. And just for the listeners to know, I heard you on the Functional Moms podcast, and they were on my podcast also. And I just loved every way that you approached helping women. And of course, we're talking to midlife women today. But I want to know more about you first. I want to know, how did you decide that functional medicine was right for you? Where did that come from? Did you ever think of Western medicine, or was there a progression to get there? And what were you interested in as a kid? What did you like?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking me that, Kim. We all have our personal story that leads us into medicine, right? So, yeah, I actually wanted to be an ER physician for most of my life. I was an EMT, I worked with paramedics. I loved the rush of the ER, the adrenaline rush. And so was actually on track to do that. Took my MCATs, applied to conventional medical schools. But in the midst of all that, I actually went to UConn, the University of Connecticut, and was studying nutrition and was doing so much in the nutrition world. And so had this kind of weird paradox going on of wanting to pursue conventional medicine, but definitely more in the holistic realm. And growing up, was always really interested in eating healthy and sports and exercise and how can I, optimize performance? How can I feel my best? Just had a natural gravitation toward those topics. So fast forward, I took a year off after college to do. Actually, I thought I was going to go into the Peace Corps, and then sadly did not get into the Peace Corps and did something called AmeriCorps instead. And that is kind of like the Peace Corps, but you stay in the United States. And so I was involved in kind of the health sphere of that. So while that was going on, I actually developed pretty severe gut health stuff, as many naturopaths do. And one of my sweet friends at the time said, you should go see a naturopathic doctor. And I said, what in the world is a naturopathic doctor? But I trusted her. And so I went and saw this doctor, and she was incredible, absolutely amazing. She not only healed all of my gut issues, but healed so many other parts of me that I didn't know needed healing at the time. And so as I was applying to medical school, she kind of just nudged me and was like, it's interesting that you're coming to see me, but you're still pursuing conventional medical school. Have you thought about naturopathic medical school? And so through her help, I actually went out and visited Bastyr University, which is one of the naturopathic medical schools out in Kenmore, Washington, and fell in love with it. The curriculum, the values, the campus, and I said, I am sold. So that is how I got into naturopathic medicine, and then decided to do some extra training in functional medicine, and has landed me here. And I have no regrets. It's been an incredible journey so far.
I love that. And I love that you kind of were going down that path. You always had that passion to help people, heal and with their bodies. So it all flows together. And we were talking offline. We're both from Connecticut, and I went to UConn for a year also. So I think that's really cool. And I love it up there. So I'm so glad that you're able to help people in the more holistic realm. And it's funny that you mentioned the gut health, because I did a gut health series before I met you and knew about you. And most of the people that I had on were naturopathic functional medicine people, because of the depth and going into the root cause of what's happening with our bodies, and not just pouring on. It started with my own personal story, pouring on the Miralax and the Ducalax, like really getting down to the bottom of it. So anyway, I love that. And I'm excited to talk to you, because when women come into you, I really want to know what you're seeing, midlife women, especially when they're coming in. What are they saying to you? What is the big problem?
Yes, great question, of course.
Mm.
It's a combination of weight loss and fatigue, and this general, I am starting to feel like I'm aging and I'm not aging well, or I want to be aging better and I don't feel my best. What can I do? Where do I start? So it's complicated and it's multi-layered, but I would absolutely say the fatigue, the weight loss, and then the perimenopause/menopause.
Yes. And we've talked a lot about perimenopause and menopause on the show. But one of the things that we haven't talked about is really getting into, from the more holistic side, looking at weight loss, because women in this age range have literally been dieting for 25 years. So, what, when they come to you, is that what they want first? Is they want, like, hey, tell me what to eat, tell me what to do, tell me what exercise to do, tell me what supplements to take? Is that how they're approaching it still?
100% they are. And I can tell you are obviously in this sphere too, right? Because I'm sure you see that. And, I don't like to make too many generalizations because, of course, everybody has their own story. But yes, I mean, at the end of the day, we are busy, busy women, right? We have a lot going on. And so we want the quick fix. And I have so much empathy for that because I get it, right? We want that. But I really have to slow women down and say, look, let's talk about what you've tried in the past. Let's look at those patterns of what you've tried, why they have not worked, and let's talk about what we need to do differently, right? And 9 times out of 10, I am constantly reminding them this is not a quick fix. You're not going to lose weight as quickly as you want to. And it's funny because I'll be working with someone for 1 or 2 months and they'll come back and they'll say, okay, I have lost weight, but I've only lost 2 pounds or I've only lost 3 pounds. And I feel like I should be losing weight more quickly. And I have to remind them, remember what I told you on day one when I said this isn't going to be a quick fix. We want to focus on the positives. You have made incredible progress, but you're right, it's not quick because unfortunately, weight loss is not easy or quick.
That is true. It's not easy. There's actually I've heard people say this, and I get it, but women don't get it. It's simple when you really look at what needs to be done, but it is not easy. It's
Yes,
not easy.
so true.
And mentally, mindset wise, it's really challenging. And I think the other thing that's interesting is when we look at all the factors of weight loss, women only want the scale weight. They don't understand that when they look better and have less inflammation, and we don't look at muscle mass. Do you explain that to them too? And do they see other things that are happening to their bodies besides the weight?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good topic. Yes, 100%. I counsel almost all of my patients through this of how to use the scale appropriately when it comes to weight loss. So many women have such a poor relationship to the scale, right? So I say it's not the scale, it's your relationship to the scale, right? So you are so attached to this one number, but what does that number actually mean? And for most women, they're attached to that number when they were 20 or 30 or just in a more nostalgic season of their life. And they associate that joy with that lower number on the scale. But I have to remind them, you're in a different season of life. You are a different iteration of yourself. And so we want to detach ourselves from that number. And then to your second point of, yes, we're looking for other things in terms of body composition, right? So that number, my goodness, it doesn't mean anything when you could I could put 20 pounds of muscle on you, have you lose 25 pounds of fat, that number is going to be higher, right? But you are going to have a drastically different and healthier body composition. So with a lot of my patients, sometimes we will just opt not to use the scale. We will go by how they feel, how their clothes are fitting, and that is amazing. Some women really want that data, right? And so we'll continue to use the scale, but we'll use an in-body machine. So we're going to be measuring body composition, right? Like muscle mass, fat, water, all these different factors that have a huge role in how they're feeling. And it makes a big difference when you can help women see that, look, we're putting on that muscle and we're losing fat, right? Even though that number isn't necessarily changing on the scale.
Such good points. Something you said that I think is really important is we've attached certain joy in certain parts of our lives with the scale. And it is not just the number, thinking, oh, we were whatever weight we were in high school, for example. But it's also because things might have been happier, easier, lighter at that time, not just body being lighter. So I love that you said that, and then detaching ourselves. I actually, for the first time this year, a lot of my listeners, if you're new, I'll tell you now, I have suffered from emotional eating, disordered eating for a long, long time until I started really studying it and helping other people. And I finally switched to doing the in body scan once a quarter. And my weight actually went up because I started really lifting and my body fat did go down. And again, that was a very hard thing for me to see, to watch, because that's the first thing that comes up when you're doing the in-body scan. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've gained a couple pounds. But then when you look at the actual data, because I'm also a data girl, I'm a math girl. I love that you mentioned that because there are other factors. And that actually leads me into a conversation. I was listening to you on your feed and talking to the Functional Moms podcast girls, and you talked about tracking, and something you said really floored me, but it makes sense about how much we eat, but our brain does not really understand how much, and a lot of times we are overeating without realizing it. I would love for you to really dive into this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is such a great topic. And again, so common, right? So many of us, myself included, struggle with this. And I really I mean, obviously, I've always been interested in health and nutrition, but I really became interested in weight loss specifically when I made the realization that I was overeating so much more than I thought I was. And I had a nutrition degree, I was in medical school, right? So it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If I don't have an understanding of what I'm eating and putting into my body, then so many other people don't understand that either, right? And this is where that disconnect comes into play because women will come to me and they will say, Dr. DiNello, I swear that I eat really healthy. I promise I am not lying about what I'm eating. I am not sneaking cookies at night, but I'm not losing weight. So what is going on? And when we dig deeper, I always say, gosh, I believe you. I truly do 100%. Like you are justified in what you're saying, but you don't have a full understanding of what you are actually eating because you might not be eating frequently or you might not be eating the chips and the cookies, but you still are giving your body more than it needs, right? Or you are eating too many carbohydrates without realizing it. So, yeah, there is a disconnect between what we think we're eating and what our body actually needs. And I love tracking for this reason, right? And there's a lot of different ways we can track. And when I meet with patients, we really find what way of tracking, what method is best for them. But it is so powerful and valuable because you get to see this is actually the amount of food that my body needs to be healthy, to either maintain or lose weight, to maintain muscle mass, to build muscle mass, whatever our goals are. And this is what it looks like on a plate throughout the day. And most women are like, oh boy, I didn't realize that I was eating way more than what this portion actually is.
That's really powerful. And I think when I had to stop tracking for a long time because again, the disordered part of that, my brain became overly obsessed with it. And then I would restrict, and we can talk about that too when women restrict because that's our natural response to gaining weight or feeling like we're overeating or emotionally eating. But when I did it in a much more healthy emotional and mental space, and I was ready to do it just for information. I also found that there's this grazing thing that I would do because I didn't plan a meal. Like I love eating breakfast, and we can even get into intermittent fasting, but I love eating breakfast and then I have lunch. And there was this space that everybody falls into between 3 and 6 o'clock. Your dinner's not made yet. Before I quit drinking, it would be a glass of wine while I was cooking dinner, and that would, stave off the appetite. But this grazing where I just came in, and there was an emotional part to it too because of the transition from work to home was also a hard one for me. And I found out that the things that I was putting in my mouth, the things that I was putting in were not only, I didn't know how much I was putting in, the even if it was healthy, nuts, for example. I just
Hmm.
kept going back to the bag, kept going back to the bag. And I had to train myself to have a mini meal at between 3 and 4 o'clock that was real. The things that, you talk about, the protein, the fiber, and actually have a meal, not a full blown meal, but enough to satisfy me to get to dinner. So when we talk about that, and I know you train women how to find ways in their own life individually, what works for them. But do you find that they're doing what I would do, where I would feel like, oh, yeah, I'm overeating. I'd have it tracked in my Fitness Pal. I'd be freaking out because I went over calories, and you see this minus thing at the end, which is so daunting. Then the next day I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to intermittent fast. I'm not going to eat. Do you have women doing that back and forth thing where they restrict, and then of course they're going to eat even more when they come back to it?
Oh my goodness. Yes,
Mhm.
100%. Thank you for bringing this up, right? And you touched on a lot of key points here, but this is a scenario that I see very, very often, almost daily in my new patients when they come to see me. And the first thing you said was, that you're right. Like you start the day off, with a really healthy breakfast. Maybe you even get a workout in, and then you have a really healthy lunch, and then up that fatigue, that boredom, whatever that hard emotion is, right? In that afternoon. And I think we need to ask ourselves, why are so many women struggling with this, right? This is a very, very common pattern that we see, but why? And there's a couple of reasons, of course, and it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. But, if you are listening and you find yourself struggling with that, try and dig deep and ask yourself, why am I struggling at this time point, right? I have a lot of theories: fatigue, adrenal fatigue, cortisol issues, busy lives as women where, whether we're working with the kids, whatever it is, we're exhausted, we're busy, and then we finally have this moment to ourselves in the afternoon, maybe during nap time, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's my time. I need to, give myself some joy, right? Joy and dopamine are another important factor there. But so that's my first tip is, really dig deep and ask yourself, why am I struggling at this time point? The other key here is going from 12 o'clock lunch to, 6 o'clock dinner, 5, 6, 7, even later for so many women, dinner. That is a very long amount of time to not have food. So many women get afraid to snack at that time period, so they try to avoid snacking only to then need a lot of food before dinner because they're starving. We should not expect our bodies to go that long without a snack. So I love what you said, where you were like, I decided to bring in a really healthy meal around that, I think you said 3 to 4 o'clock time period. And that's exactly what I counsel my patients to do. I say, have, even if it's something simple, right? You might be at work and it might be a really busy bit of time during the day, or you might be going to pick up the kids or something. Have a protein shake even in the car or at your desk, or a yogurt, right? If you have a little bit more time, then yes, absolutely make a really healthy meal with protein, fiber, and veggies. But if not, it can be something quick, but let's plan to have a snack, because absolutely we're going to be so hungry at dinner time, and then we're going to overeat at a dinner if we don't have that healthy snack.
Oh, that's so good. I really think too, diet culture has taught us that we are supposed to be restricted. We're supposed to be okay with being hungry. And it's really exciting for me. And I know some of my clients even have the hunger cues because we've turned them off in different ways, or hormones, or they're overactive, or, we know about ghrelin and leptin. It's things have happened, that things have changed. So when I actually get a hunger cue now, I'm like, oh, that's exciting, because I now know I never have them in the morning because I did fast for a long time. But it wasn't really because of the trendy part of it. My morning, I just love to get up, hang out with my husband for a little while. Of course, I have a cup of coffee. I love to get that workout in. And then things get rolling, and I push breakfast off because I wasn't feeling it. And when I really started slowing that process down, I could start feeling the hunger cues again in the morning. But I am curious. I love to ask every professional, every practitioner this. What are your thoughts for either, whatever you call it, however you describe it, time restricted eating or intermittent fasting? I've heard so many different things. What are your thoughts for women in midlife on that?
Yeah, another amazing question. And I love that you even prefaced it with all the different names now, because yes, I also don't know what to
Mhm.
call it anymore. But yeah, right, it is so quote unquote trendy right now. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, to be honest. And my approach really is to take it patient by patient and provide patients with a really individualized approach, because it can work beautifully for some women, absolutely. However, I see it used incorrectly a lot of the times. And so what I really try to encourage women is, if they are not already doing this, to try and aim for just about a 10 to 12-hour overnight fast. That is a really good starting point, because naturally that is what our bodies want and crave and need. We need that amount of time for healthy circadian rhythm, to allow cortisol to come down at night, melatonin to rise, and then to do the opposites in the morning, right? And then also for gut health, right? For that migrating motor complex to kick in overnight, so that we can eliminate any food waste product in our gut that we haven't eliminated already. So I tell people, if you're not already doing this, let's really try and aim for that 10 to 12 hours overnight. Now, the caveat here is, I want most of that to be before bed and while you're sleeping, not too late into the morning. So I really encourage women to stop eating about 2 to 3 hours, if possible, before bed, so that we can regulate leptin and adiponectin, so that we can regulate cortisol and melatonin. And that allows a really healthy circadian rhythm. And so you're not eating, right, most of the time, before bed and when you're sleeping, so that, like you said, you can have that natural hunger cue that we should have in the morning to break that fast. Now, this gets into a larger topic here of, I see women, not eating going into the day, right? Into 12, 1 o'clock. And then we start to really worry about muscle breakdown. Naturally, during a fast, we are absolutely going to be breaking down our muscle for energy, right? To use those amino acids. However, when we don't stop that fast and we let it prolong into the day, it can have detrimental effects on our overall body composition. And so I am a big fan of breaking that fast, within 1 to 2 hours of waking up, particularly if you're doing a workout, trying not to do a fasted workout, and then really getting a lot of protein in, 30 to 60 minutes after that workout. Because another huge piece here that I worry about with middle-aged women is osteoporosis. I don't want you coming to my office at 70 years old, seeing on your DEXA scan that you have osteoporosis. I want you coming into my office when you're 40, 45, 50, saying, hey, what can I start to do preventatively so that I don't develop osteoporosis or a fracture later in life? And one of the biggest things is making sure we're not intermittent fasting for too long into the morning, so that we are really focusing on building up that muscle and not breaking it down too much.
I love that. And I think some of the women that I talk to, especially because with emotional eating, a lot of these topics come up. I feel like it's just another way to diet, and it's just wrapped up in a different message. And we're doing it for, and I'm putting in air quotes for those of you who are listening, the healthy reasons. But really, it's just another way for us to restrict calories, and instead of doing it in a healthful way through food. But everybody is different, and I know everybody can do it differently. I find it really hard at night, and that is what I'm working on, to stop eating at 8 o'clock, but it's something that I always feel better when I do. We all do. And my husband is always saying, he doesn't have reflux when we do that, and all the different things that go with it, falls asleep faster. I love that. I'm going to actually move you, since you were talking about osteoporosis. This is such a great segue. Let's talk about the exercise that you would love to see midlife people doing in order to, one, help that bone density, but also just in general help our lives for longevity. Because we, like you said at the beginning, everyone's coming in looking to age well. So, what do you love for exercise?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, I really just want women to start moving their bodies more, right? And so, if you come to me and you are not moving your body at all, we are going to take inventory of that and say, well, what do you feel like you are capable of doing, right? Because if there's no movement at all, I'm not going to say, all right, I want you in the gym 4 to 5 times a week, like let's go, right? When we go from 0 to 100, we know that that often sets us up for failure long term, right? And so really I say, let's just start with, what's easy and what's doable. And that might be, a 10-minute walk twice per week, or what the functional moms were talking about, right? Those 5-minute workouts, those are incredible. Just something to start getting your body moving, because we know that for longevity purposes, exercise is always going to win, right? It's always going to be a really important way for us to age well. If I can get a little pickier here, I am really going to encourage women to start lifting heavy things. And that, so many women have a negative perception of that, right? And so I am debunking a lot of myths when it comes to weightlifting. And so this is a complex topic, but number one, really trying to lift heavy things, even if you just start off with once a week. I think the most recent data for preventing muscle breakdown and helping to prevent against osteoporosis is like 2 sessions, 20 minutes a week. So that's usually what I'll start up my patients off with. Like if they're already doing some cardio or they're already exercising a bit, I'll say, look, let's add in 2 20-minute weight training sessions per week. And I really give my patients free reign. I'm like, that can look any way you want it to look right now, because I just want to start developing that pattern and that behavior so that we can get used to it and get it just a normal part of your life. But then we take it a step further and we say, okay, are we working all of our muscle groups properly, right? How many reps per muscle group are we getting in? How much total weight are we getting in? So long story short, when it comes to longevity, aging well, weight loss, preventing against osteoporosis, the data absolutely points to weightlifting. We cannot get around it. So if you don't like it, I tell patients, start to like it, right? Start to tell yourself you can do hard things, because it is so valuable on so many different levels.
I love that. Weightlifting actually has changed, literally changed my body. I think it's also changed my mindset. I was a marathon runner for 20 years. I trained for at least 1 year, which was training all year long, basically. And
Mhm.
the body that I have now, I don't love this term, but I think people understand it. I was skinny fat. I did not have, and I wasn't even really skinny. I didn't even really, I had a lot of inflammation, and when I started lifting weights, I immediately felt the difference. And what I tried to look at, and I share with my clients, what if you could wear the clothes you wanted to wear, you felt leaner, you felt tighter from the inside out? Would the scale matter? And that's what lifting gives us. And it's an endocrine organ, so it helps with blood sugar, it helps with hormone balance. So I love that you said that, because that's the message that we're hearing. But people are so, like you said, there's a lot of resistance to it. And I think there's a fear. And I think if you can work with someone, maybe that will be a little more helpful, or meet up with somebody who does it, or go to, if you do go to the gym, get on the treadmill and just watch what everybody's doing for now. But I mean, I would love everybody to have good form, because that's how we get injured or we drop out. Okay, so now can we talk about protein? Because if you go online and you even accidentally get your algorithm going on protein right now, you have to actually make it a second job to eat enough protein in order to support this muscle in midlife. So I'd love to know all thoughts on protein. And I'm not knocking that, by the way. I just know that it becomes overwhelming for women.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Kim, you're right. We have really similar thought patterns in most of these topics, because it is overwhelming. What I will say is I absolutely appreciate where the medical field, where social media is when it comes to protein, because at the end of the day, this whole movement started because so many Americans are absolutely under eating protein, right? So if we take out body image, osteoporosis, nice lean bodies, right? Though if we take away all of that, what we are still looking at is a country that eats really high amounts of carbs and doesn't eat enough protein, right? And of course, nutrients, right? That's a whole nother thing. So that's where this all started. And so we can absolutely appreciate that. Where this has become a little bit more complicated is, well, then how much protein and when and which branched chain amino acids and how many grams of branched chain amino acids, right? All of those factors have overcomplicated it. So when a patient comes to me, we will take inventory of how much protein I think they're getting. And sometimes sometimes we will start tracking that, but sometimes not. I'll just say, let's just get in the food group, right? The protein food group at every meal. That's a really good place to start. So if you are like, oh my goodness, this is complicated, what do I do? The first thing is, whenever you are having a meal, ask yourself, where is the protein on my plate? And if you've got some protein, that's a great place to start. You're good. Right? So get that underway. Once you are comfortable with that and you're like, yeah, I'm absolutely getting protein with most of my meals, then we can say, well, what are those protein sources looking like? Are they healthy proteins? Are they lean proteins? Or is there a lot of, packaged protein, right? These protein shakes. And of course, these are amazing. They have their place. They can be really helpful. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're getting our protein from whole food sources, right? Because that's going to be the best protein. Absolutely. So then we can get, and if we're good with that, then we can get a little bit more nuanced. And we can say, okay, well, if you're working out in the morning, then I want you to really make sure you're getting in some amount of protein within 30 to 60 minutes of that workout. Now, we can debate this a little bit. Technically, the research says, well, it doesn't really matter too much that you're getting it within that time frame. What matters most is we're getting a solid amount of protein in those 24 hours. So this is a hotly debated topic. But what I will say is I advocate for my patients to get in, 20, 30 grams if they can within those 30 to 60 minutes. For some people, that's truly, truly difficult. So I really don't like to start patients at zero and then say, okay, get in 30 grams of protein. They're not going to be able to digest it. They're going to feel bloated. They're going to get a stomach ache, right? So we also need to make sure that gut health is functioning properly, right? Or else you're not going to be able to digest and absorb those amino acids. And then, we look at how can we combine this protein to make you feel satiated so that you're not getting those 3 p.m. cravings, right, for sugar. So overall, I'm a big fan of making sure we're getting in enough protein. It's absolutely vital for longevity. Absolutely. You mentioned the importance of skeletal muscle for preventing osteoporosis, diabetes, blood sugar. Oh my goodness, I see this all the time. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I see 50, 60-year-old women coming to me. Either I'm diagnosing them with diabetes or their primary care doctor has recently diagnosed them with diabetes. They are shocked. They're like, I never had blood sugar issues before. Why do I all of a sudden have diabetes? One of the theories is that it's because they have low muscle mass, right? And so having protein, doing, oh my gosh, doing strength training, that's going to be super valuable for preventing these chronic diseases. So long story short, protein matters. Give yourself some grace if you're starting off with trying to be more aware of protein, and it's layered. So then you become a little bit more nuanced over time when you get comfortable in understanding protein.
I appreciate you sharing that. That was a really great explanation, but also I love your empathy and compassion for people who are just starting off because it's so daunting. And when you start off with that much protein and you're not having the fiber and some of the other things, it's hard on the belly. It really is. I love that. So I'm going to veer back to emotional eating a little bit because you said something that hits home so hard for me when you talked about food as joy and getting that dopamine hit. When you're talking to women and they're dealing with overeating, the cravings, what do you think are some of the more root causes that people, because we know we have cravings, we know we love sugar, we know we enjoy food, but a lot of times there's a deeper level to what's going on. I'd love to know what you're seeing with your patients.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. It's complicated, right? Gosh, I love First of all, Kim, I just have to say, I love what you do. I love this podcast because it's so important. This work is so important, and so many women struggle with it, right? It's not always something we can freely talk about. Weight loss coaching is emotional, right? Women, really, what I've recognized is that women want to be heard when it comes to the story behind their weight gain. And that is what I spend the majority of my first visit with women doing, is hearing their story. Because yes, it's an emotional topic. There is a strong reason for every woman behind why they weigh the amount they weigh, whether they were struggling with disordered eating, an eating disorder, or they just had a busy season of life where they had to put themselves on the back burner for the people they love, right? I mean, goodness, it's complicated. So really, what that's actually probably the most common thing I see is that women come to me, they're like, I am exhausted. Menopause is hitting me really hard. I just can't get a grasp on what I need. I know I need to change. I know I want to feel better, but I just can't figure it out. I can't get the ball rolling. And that's because for years and years, they've put themselves on the back burner, right? It's like we think about in our 20s and our 30s, we had babies, maybe we were breastfeeding, we got really depleted of nutrients. But that's also when we started to become caregivers for our kids, right? And so then the kids get older, right? We become busier because kids are doing a million and one activities. You stop exercising, you stop working out. You also stop getting healthcare because you're getting healthcare for everybody else in your family. So nobody's checking those nutrient levels, right? No one's checking in on your gut health. No one's checking in on your cardiovascular health. So then fast forward to when your kids are older, maybe they've moved out and you're like, okay, I finally have time to take care of myself. I don't even know where to begin. And so the first thing with that emotional piece is we really start to unravel what needs are not being met for you, right? And that is hard. My gosh, I think almost all of my patients cry in my office because they haven't taken the time to really think about it, or no one's really asked them that question of what needs are not being met and what do you need to feel healthy and satisfied and happy and fulfilled, right? And so that's the first piece that I see. The second piece that I see is absolutely this idea of I have used food as my way to get joy because I am surviving, right? I work all day, I have this crazy career, and then I take care of my kids, I take care of my partner maybe. So then at 10 p.m., when everyone's in bed doing their own thing, I am like, okay, how can I get joy? And it's like Netflix and cookies, right? Or wine. That's how we get our joy. And I never blame somebody, right? Because gosh, there's a lot of shame in that. When a woman really tells me that, yeah, that's it. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm getting joy from watching freaking Netflix and eating cookies. Like that's often a wake up call for them because they feel ashamed about it. Like, gosh, I can't believe I'm admitting this to myself for the first time. I can't believe I'm admitting it to another person. And that's where it really begins. And so I have so much empathy for that because we're human. And at the end of the day, we're just going to do what we need to do to survive. So we have to pull women out of that fight or flight, out of that survival mode. And that takes time. And as you know, it's complicated. And that's where we start to say, okay, how do we rewire those neural connections in our brain? Because for so long, you've been using food as a coping mechanism. So that's where your brain is going immediately. And we need to change that. And that takes time. So I know I touched on a lot of a lot of points there, but it's
So
common.
good. It's so good. It is complicated and it runs so deep because everyone has their own methods of survival and they also have been through so much. Everyone has their own story. So what they are coping, soothing, escaping from, numbing from, it's so much deeper. I love how you shared that. And I love how you listen and have such a non judgmental way of letting women share their story. Because you just said it. There's a really deep emotional story behind every woman who's feeling like they're overeating and emotional eating. Yes. Oh, I love it. So, Dr. Katie, please share a few tips that, people who are just hearing this or just getting started, they've wanted to do this, they wanted to get started, and you can mention anything you've mentioned already, but let's make it simple. What are three things that people could do just to slowly ease into this beautiful process of taking care of themselves a little bit more health wise?
Yeah, I love this, right? Because at the end of the day, we need practical tips that we can implement into our lives in a simple way. So, the first thing is, well, of course, I'll just say as a side note, if you have the option to work with a functional provider, whether it's a functional health coach, a functional doctor, absolutely do that because we have such specialized training that unfortunately conventional medicine just doesn't have. There's nothing against conventional medicine. We just have a different perspective than them. So if you can work with a conventional provider, amazing. But if you can't, the first thing I recommend is take some time to quiet your mind and be really honest with yourself. Be honest with your needs, be honest with your goals, and be honest with what you're doing that isn't working for you or isn't serving you, right? Because if your goal, let's just say your goal is weight loss, right? But you are not getting joy from that journey of trying to lose weight, it's not going to work, right? We have to find the joy in that journey because weight loss takes time. And so if we don't enjoy what we're doing, we're not going to stick with it. So number one, quiet your mind and be really honest with yourself with what your goals are and with what you actually need to do to reach those goals. And if you're doing those things, right? My guess is you're not. Otherwise, you'd be there already. Number two is surround yourself with people and influences in your life who have similar goals and who are going to support you. You would be shocked, or maybe Kim, you won't be shocked. Maybe you see this a lot, but I was shocked when I started my medical career and seeing patients with how unsupportive people's partners can be. And that's really hard to navigate. And you need to talk that through with a third party and with your partner. So being really honest with your partner and saying, look, these are my goals. I really need you to support me in this. If you love me, please support me, right? But being honest with your partner, but also flood your social media with influential people who are going to be helpful for you. The majority of my social media is this. It's accounts like yours, Kim, who are talking about these things in a really positive way because I'm human too. I need reminders. I struggle. And so I know that when I open up my social media account, it's going to be these great accounts that are going to give me a lot of positive thoughts and outlooks. And then, of course, I have great friends and family who have similar goals to me as well, right? I don't work out in isolation, right? I talk about my workouts with people. Like, I love going on walks with people, right? If I'm meeting up with a friend, it's always like, let's get outside, let's go for a walk, let's go for a run, right? So that's the second tip. The third tip is a strategy that I use with a lot of my patients, and that is if you don't know where to begin with your health journey, I want you to sit down and write down anywhere from like 5 to 7 health behaviors that feel attainable for you. So this could be, what time you go to bed, what time you wake up in the morning, journaling, eating a certain number of fruits per day, a certain number of veggies today, maybe protein with every meal, water goals, right? All of these different goals. I want you to write down about 5 to 7 of them. And I want you to try and do at least 1 to 2 of these every day. That way, you are pushing your health in a positive direction forward, but it doesn't feel overwhelming and daunting. There might be some days where you hit all 7 of those goals and you give yourself a pat on the back. You're like, heck yes, that was a great day. But on the other days when you're really busy, you have a lot going on, you can still do 1 or 2 of those goals, and it was still a successful day that pushed your health in a positive direction.
Well, those are powerful. I want to go back to the first one. I love how you talk about being happy in the journey because the destination that we're always looking for, that goal is always really going to change anyway as we get closer to it. And the journey every day, finding joy in our day, that's what makes us feel healthy. So I love that. And just really being honest with ourselves because that's painful. It's painful to be honest sometimes about where we are and that we need to change, but it's pain that brings the change sometimes. So it's a good thing to look at. And the second one, getting people in your circle that you can talk about this. Love, I have my best friend from seventh grade is still in Connecticut by where you live. And we text every day. I'm in Florida and we text every day but fun, like what we did for our workout. Sometimes we're even doing the same workout. And just something to, say, hey, I did it. I didn't do it. This is why. And, there are a lot of times we have to just pump each other up and give each other that win. And you need to give yourself that win every day too. And I love you did not overwhelm everyone in number three, 5 to 7 goals, and you don't have to do all 5 to 7.
Right.
Picking the ones that are reachable. And you really talked about it, not necessarily using the word, but creating that consistency. And I think what is hard to understand if you're not in it that staying in a healthy routine is easier than starting a healthy routine. So if you can just get in and do something, it feels really good. And I follow you for the same reason because my social media has to give me something. And this is so funny. I'm just going to share this really quick. Somebody wrote me a DM and said, well, you've got all these followers, but you're not following people back. And what happens is when you follow people, you follow who they follow and you get all their
Mhm.
information. And I'm very protective of my peace and what makes me happy and joyful, and I get really bad comparisonitis if I start watching too many of the wrong things. So that is why I do exactly what you do. I surround myself in my algorithm as much as possible with those things. You're amazing, Dr. Katie. I'm so thrilled we had this conversation, and I want everyone to find you. So can you please share, where can the listeners catch up with you online?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. So I'm definitely most active on my Instagram account. That's just my name, Katie, Katie dot DiNello, Dinello. I try to show up really authentically on there. So you will see my crazy 3-year-old running around in the background, my husband, us trying to cook and make healthy meals, and it's messy and imperfect. So we have a lot of fun over there. And then you can always see me as a patient. I do see patients virtually as well, or you can come to me in person if you are in the Connecticut area.
Oh, that's great. And all of this will be in the show notes with even more information about Dr. Katie DiNello. Katie, thank you so much for coming in and sharing. You are so compassionate, non judgmental, and you educate so well. And I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for everyone else, please make sure you nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today.